Hello, it's Anthony Chadwick from the Webinar Vet, welcoming you to another episode of VETChat. And we're very fortunate today to have an old friend, Julia Felton, on. Julia has a business called businesshorsepower.com. So we are going to be talking about horses, but we'll do that a bit later on as we go along. Julia's got a long history in the corporate world with Deloitte and Arthur Andersen. She now does a lot of consultancy for businesses using different strategies, including talent dynamics, which is a tool that we use in our own business, a tool that was developed by one of our mentors called Roger Hamilton.
Yep.
And we'll probably talk a little bit about talent dynamics as well. But Julia, perhaps fill us in on a few of the gaps so that people know who you are, and then we'll start chatting.
Sure. Well, first of all, Anthony, thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast. Really, really excited to be here and great to reconnect with you. So, yeah, as Anthony said, I used to work at Arthur Andersen and Deloitte, and I was one of those really fortunate people that was headhunted into a company to set up my own business division. So I was given a blank sheet of paper, and Arthur Andersen said, please develop this product and service for us. And actually, in the day, my background was in the hospitality industry. So I actually set up what would now be regarded as a big data business, collecting data from hotels. Originally, we started in Europe and then it expanded to all across the world, apart from North America and Canada, where we were collecting statistics on hotel performance at the start monthly, and then we went to daily. And sharing that back with the industry. So I was really fortunate. I traveled a lot around the world speaking on how the industry was performing and what was going on. And some people might recognize or might have remember back in the past, Arthur Andersen was one of the top 5 accountancy firms in the world, alongside PwC and Deloitte and E&Y and KPMG. And unfortunately, we got embroiled in a scandal regarding a big oil giant out in Texas called Enron. And the result of that was that whole company ended up folding. We were found to be complicit in some fraud. And all of our customers actually lost trust in us. And so they left. They didn't feel they could be audited by a company that had so many question marks over their name. Years later, actually, the company was found not to have been complicit and we were exonerated, but too late. By that time, the whole company had disappeared. And I share that for a couple of reasons. One, because I learned how hard it was to lead a business through uncertainty. We had 9 months between the time that Arthur Andersen in the UK was purchased by Deloitte and when this came to visibility back at the end of 2001, I believe it was. So I really understand the challenges of leading through uncertainty. But with that business, fortunately, we transitioned to Deloitte and I run that business for them for another 6 years. And eventually Deloitte decided to sell my business unit. So again, I share that because I've seen a business through the whole product life cycle from start all the way through to the sale. And after that, then I set up my own business, which is in leadership development and team engagement. And the horses weren't part of the business to begin with, but it's something I stumbled across and I was like, this is great. I can combine my passion of business with my love of horses. So now horses form part of the leadership interventions that we provide. So yeah, hopefully that's a quick summary.
It's interesting, the business that you set up with the hotels. Coincidentally, Hills Pet Nutrition did a lot of work with Arthur Andersen, and they were very much seeing where the trends for veterinary practice would go. And I remember being at meetings in the late 1990s, and Hills and Arthur Andersen were saying, well, you know, the business is going to go, it's going to copy the opticians. The opticians are ahead of us. The sort of Specsavers and people like that were already in the optical industry. And of course, we've seen a similar thing going on with corporatization in the veterinary industry. And then, of course, going back into the 90s, we had the Fort Dodge indices, which was basically benchmarking veterinary practices against each other. It was set up by an external consultant called Alan Robinson, who was one of our first ever webinar speakers. And of course, you know, I've stayed very close to Alan when I did the stuff with Roger and with Daniel Wagner. Then Alan often came to that, and of
Yep.
course he's now got his vet dynamics business, which is,
Yep.
I think, been a real benefit for practices, independent practices throughout the UK and
Sure.
even further afield.
Absolutely.
So obviously you're using quite a lot of tests and things. Let's talk maybe a little bit about talent dynamics first, because
Sure.
one of the things I found useful when I did that was I realized that I was spending a lot of time in my business being an administrator, and it wasn't my passion. You know, my passion
Okay.
was getting up, getting things going, starting things. I had my business, my veterinary practice for 14 years. Um, but what I loved was being a vet. And actually, as a vet, you present every day. You have a
Hmm.
client in front of you and you are giving a presentation. And then another
Absolutely.
client comes in and you're giving a slightly different presentation. And it's very impromptu, but you know what the framework is, you know how you're going to go over that. And I thoroughly enjoyed that side. I didn't enjoy so much kind of all the admin and all the HR that came with it. But of course, there's some people who love HR, and I think with the talent dynamic, it's building up a team that actually, you know, covers all the bases, isn't it? Is that where you're using it
Yeah.
when you go into business as well?
Absolutely, because I think the joy of talent dynamics is the understanding that triad of the three different energies that you need on a team in
Yeah,
order to create that stability. And of course, the triad, the strongest structure in nature. So, for those of our listeners not familiar with talent dynamics, you need to create a team that is one person, one profile away. So it's effectively two profiles away from you and then three profiles away from you. So as a creator, which is my profile, I love creating new things. I need to work with a supporter and an accumulator. And they're the people that I need in my team. And I know that from experience of running my own business, how vital that is. I think I always see business as a team sport, and the importance of having people around you, but complementary people, not people that are sharing with you the same old, because then you get stuck. And in
yeah,
fact, I was just talking with a colleague prior to this call today, who they were just saying how they were working with a business and the business owner had hired people just like them. So either you can get a business that's all creative, it's coming up with these amazing ideas, but there's no execution going on, or there's no customer
yeah.
follow up going on, or no analytics going on. So it's so important that we have people in these different areas. And that brings this whole diversity of thought, which is a massive topic right now. How do we get different diverse perspectives? Because if everyone's similar to us, we just get a similar perspective. But this diversity of perspective is just so important within a team. And that's what makes it more inclusive and more cohesive. And I think, indeed, much more collaborative when we can all work together in that way.
You know, there's a lot of leadership which is around autocracy, it's around command and control. We're going to tell you what to do and you need to go on and do it. Um, Horses in a herd probably work differently, and in fact, having a team which is broader, which has skills in different places, we call on those people, we see them as leaders in the company. It probably brings more strength than just having one person who's telling everybody what to do all the time. And how did you kind of come upon the idea of looking at how horses communicate in herds and how you could use them to demonstrate maybe some business models?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've always been fascinated with horses. Actually, ironically, I didn't grow up with horses. I went riding when I was a kid and rode for a little bit. But then they pretty much dropped out my life. And it was actually the Enron fiasco when I was at Arthur Anderson that prompted me to buy my first horse. My friend had said to me, "Oh, let's go on a ranching holiday in America and be cowboys. Wouldn't that be so amazing?" I was like, totally up for that. But I hadn't been riding for a long time. And in the end, I met somebody and I bought my first horse from her, because going through Enron was the first time that I realized a corporation wasn't going to look after me. I'd always been brought up to believe, go and work hard for a company and they'll look after you for life. And what you rapidly realized during Enron was, everything could have been lost pretty much overnight. There was no guarantee that my business division was even going to get acquired, because we were so tangential to the main accountancy business. What we were doing was so different in data analytics in the hospitality sector. So that prompted me to get my first horse. And I think it's been really insightful to see how you can work together with different types of people, because I think within the herd, like you say, this command and control structure doesn't work. What the herd has is shared leadership. And that's what I noticed from when I going to observe and work with people who worked with wild horses, was this dynamicism of shared leadership. So there's not one horse that's just in the role of leader. And right now in business, that's what we need. There's no way that one leader can know everything. I was talking the other day with somebody, and we were talking about, you confer to Mr. Google, right? And even Mr. Google doesn't always get it all right. So if even Mr. Google can't know everything, how can a leader? So I think it was going out to the herd and recognizing this concept of shared leadership that exists within the herd is just something that's so vital for us today. But one of the challenges is most leaders don't want to be vulnerable enough to share that they don't know everything, or they're too ego-based that they don't want to share the leadership with somebody else. And yet, when we look at the horse herd and how it moves, you have a lead mare at the front of the horse herd in the wild and a stallion at the back. So it's a female horse at the back and a stallion it's a female horse at the front and a stallion at the back, and the herd in the middle. And they work through a pull-push energy. So the lead mare at the front goes to find the food and the water, but the stallion is at the back pushing everything forward and making sure everyone stays together. So I love that dynamic of pull-push energy in the way that we can run and organize our teams in business.
So just maybe explain that a bit more, that pull-push. Who's
Yeah.
pulling and who's pushing?
So working in harmony, you've got the lead mare at the front, so she's setting the direction, so effectively using pull energy to pull the herd along, and at the back you're using the stallion, who's almost using a little bit of push energy. The way to think about this, Anthony, is if you draw a diamond shape on a piece of paper, and at the apex you put the lead mare, and her role is to set direction within the herd. The stallion goes at the
Yeah.
opposite side at the bottom, and their role is to put energy. And on the two sides of the diamond, you have congruence and direction. And the sentinels in the herd are almost like the observers, and they provide energy by keeping everyone together, keeping the herd unified.
No, that's really fascinating, because if you don't have that, of course, the herd then spreads out and it's no longer a herd; it's a series of individuals, isn't it?
Yeah, which is exactly what we find in business too often, all of these silos going on with no collaboration and cooperation between them. And that was one of my biggest bugbears in corporate. In the role I was in, I could see a lot which was happening in other parts of the organization, and we were always
Yeah.
replicating something in different areas. So nature, there's no wasted time, energy, or resources. And yet that's what I see time and time again in business: wasted time, energy, and resources.
I think it's true when you, especially as a business gets bigger, we obviously work with some big businesses, and it's amazing how often you're speaking to one person, but actually another person, three offices down, has no idea who you are.
Mm,
There's no sharing between groups and things, which I think is
absolutely.
is really important. And even I would say at Webinar Vet, as a smaller company, we've obviously been mainly working from home, although we're now moving back into the office in a hybrid
Yeah.
capacity, sometimes in the office, sometimes at home. And actually communications, I think I was at another talk where somebody was talking about, with comms, you don't just say it once and then forget about it. You have to say it all of the time. And they made a really great point, which I'd not thought about before. Until you are really bored about saying this, until you feel like you are a stuck record talking about it, you probably haven't talked about it enough.
Yeah, and communication is the biggest challenge we know in business right now, and even beyond communication, connection, which is what we're doing really poorly. But yeah, you have to tell people, tell them and tell them again, because people don't people's bandwidth is so small. We're so busy that we're filtering out so much. So for you to get your message through, you have to just kind of keep drumming the beat so people hear it
Yeah.
eventually. Because yeah, we all think everyone knows the strategy of the company and what we're doing, or they know that we're engaged in this project or we've got this client. And like you say, they don't. You walk to somebody else's office or you speak to somebody on a Teams or a Zoom call and they're like, oh, I didn't even know that that had happened. So it's a big challenge.
And then obviously that's internal comms, but again, from an external perspective,
Yeah.
world is much busier. You do just need to talk about stuff. You might presume that people would know we've been here 15 years, we do webinars, we do X, Y, and Z, but actually that's not the case, is it? The world is getting busier and noisier, and you have to continue to talking to be at that front of mind for people.
Yeah, people's attention span is that of a gnat, and that this is why we talk in business about having funnels and follow up and stuff like that, because when people need your service, they're going to go to the
Yeah,
person who's most recently communicated with them. I know,
yeah,
like with my vet, I've got a great relationship, so I would always call that vet. Although having said that, I recently changed vet um, because some other girls on the yard, they had a vet. She was coming up regularly. She always engaged with me, even though I wasn't her client. Asked me about my horses, and I was like, oh wow, I'm getting great customer service from this vet. It's not even my vet. So I did change,
mm,
but they were front of mind. I
yeah,
hadn't seen my vet in 4 years, thankfully. Don't My horses don't need them very often.
yeah,
So, I think it's how do we stay front of mind in a really busy world, where we think people have heard our message and they haven't. So how do
mm,
you as a veterinary practice stay front of mind with your clients?
yeah. No, exactly. Obviously, we've talked about the horses, we've talked about the herd, we've talked about how that can be synonymous with um, management and leadership and so on. But this isn't just an abstract thing. Actually, you get people to come to your stables and work with your horses, which is what
Yeah.
fascinated me. I know you've said it was something you stumbled upon. There's people doing this in different parts of the world. You're based up in Yorkshire, but you do have horses in different places you can also visit. So tell us a little bit about what does that look like, and maybe, unless you're happy to give us names, a few examples of companies who have used it and how that's been beneficial for them.
Sure. So typically we work on 1 or 2 day experiences with people. And I think what for me is so powerful about this work right now is that we're living in a society where most people are craving connection. As a result of hybrid working, people haven't even met sometimes their colleagues they're working with. So we create curating experiences where people can get together. We're beginning to live in an experience economy. So people want to come and get to know their colleagues, but it's also a very, very powerful learning experience as well, different from, going on a high ropes course, because there's a lot of profound learning here. So
Yeah,
typically, for example, on a day, people get to, first of all, get really grounded. I think most of us are running through life not living in the present moment. We're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. What haven't I prepared for? What client deadlines have I got? What happened this morning? The argument with my spouse or my partner or whatever it might be. And one of my aims with these sessions is to get people really present and in the moment. The horses will only connect and communicate with you if you are present and in the moment. The horse will let you lead them if they know that you're a leader who's trustworthy and can be followed. And if you're thinking about all these other things, what am I doing tomorrow? What happened this morning? You're not in the moment. And a horse as a prey animal, their biggest concern is when the mountain lion's going to eat them, right? Where the danger is. um,
yeah,
so we have to be really present to that. And the same in business, actually. If we're not present in business, and this is the problem, a lot of business owners aren't, they're not seeing the innovation and the trends happening, the things, the mountain lions are going to come and take them out, aka like Nokia and Kodak and people like that. So we get people really present and in the moment so they can really, really effectively communicate through body language with the horse. We'll do a selection of leading exercises and work with the horses on the ground. So people never ride the horses. Everything is done in a really safe environment through leading. And in the afternoon, we often do a teamwork exercise where everyone works as part of a team. The horse is a new team member. So how do you induct the horse into your team? And then how can you work effectively with the team to get them through an obstacle course? And those obstacles typically represent things in your business that are stopping you getting to your business goals. So, for example, it could be a lack of resources, a lack of financing, poor team performance. So that the attendees build an obstacle course that represents the challenges they're currently experiencing. And then they work with a horse at liberty, so with no ropes, in order to navigate the horse through the course. So, what does that mean? It means everyone has to work together in that diamond style of leadership. So, typically, we'll have 4 to 6 people. Somebody will be at the front, somebody will be at the back, and some people will be at the sides. And using their collective energy, they're going to navigate the horse through that course to get to the other end. And sort of, there's a number of companies that we've worked with. Some of the most well known would be Google, who we're doing quite a lot of work with at the moment. Companies such as, let's see, what do we've got that people would know? We did some work with Sport UK once upon a time, a few years ago. I work with local, partner with local leadership development companies up here in Yorkshire and across the UK, where we add a module with the horses to an existing leadership program. That can be a great way for companies to include this. So you might have your own in-house leadership program. You're like, I want to do something a bit different. Then we add that experiential element. And all I can say is that delegates always say it's transformative. That's the word that comes up all the time. I didn't know about that. But it's also very practical, because I think the biggest challenge is how do we relate what's happened with the horses back into the business world? And that would be my zone of genius, is having worked in both spheres, is to go, this is showing up here today, and then let's debrief and coach. How's that showing up with your team? What's going on with your team? What's happening with your leadership? So very interactive, very hands-on, but very, very practical and very applicable back in the workplace, which is the most important piece.
No, it sounds really powerful. And obviously, how can people find out a little bit more about it, apart from what you've explained now?
Yeah. So you're obviously welcome to check out my website, which is businesshorsepower.com. I'm always happy to have chats with people that are interested in finding out more about the work. And you can reach me at julia@businesshorsepower.com. Um, and if you also want to find out more about the work, I do have a book that I've written called Unbridled Success. These are the teamwork lessons that I've learned from horses, how to make more of an impact in leadership, teamwork, and communication. And I think, Anthony, if any of your readers want a copy, we're happy to send them an e-version out of that so that they can learn more about the power of this work. Because I'm on a mission to help more companies understand and appreciate how powerful this work can be, because I think we are a hidden diamond that people don't know about, that I know can absolutely
Hmm.
transform people's businesses to such a great degree, but people don't know enough about what we do.
We do an event once a year trying to facilitate the profession to regenerate in a more hopeful and a more environmentally friendly way. And we do that
Yeah.
at a nature reserve. And I think just connecting people with an animal,
Hmm.
we are vets, so obviously a lot of us will be familiar with that anyway,
Yeah.
but putting you out in a more natural place, that often will calm the nerves. We know
Yeah.
that animals are used for therapy. We know that stroking an animal will calm you down. It will reduce your endorphins and your steroid levels and so on. So this is just as you say. I think leaders were asked to be calm. If you see a leader that looks a bit frantic at the moment, Eric Ten Hag is the Man United manager, and he looks like he's a rabbit in headlights.
Mm.
It doesn't engender confidence, does it?
It doesn't. And, I talk about different energy levels. And, if you've got that really dysfunctional, and we talk about don't throw energy at chaos, right? Because there's more dysfunctional energy. People can't connect with it. As leaders, we need to
Yeah.
have this laser-like groundedness of energy that then becomes calming, like you say, for everyone around us. And the experience with the horses, we haven't talked about the health and well-being aspects until you just mentioned it there, but we can curate programs around health and well-being and resilience with the horses, because the horses are really resilient and adaptable. They've been on this planet for 55 million years. Humans have been on for only a few million. So there's so much we can learn from the horses about how to adapt and navigate this really, really uncertain environment that we all live in, this VUCA environment, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So there's a lot of benefits as well about just getting out. The metaphor I often use, Anthony, is people actually get a bit anxious coming to the horses, and understandably so. People are going to a new environment they've not gone to. So there's a lot about the experience actually being how to lead through uncertainty, going somewhere we're not familiar with going. But yet the irony is, we go to work every day, we think it's going to be familiar. And when does your day ever pan out like you thought it was going to, right? Every day we lead through uncertainty in the workplace. So we just do a physical manifestation of leading through uncertainty by bringing people out to be with the horses. So.
Julia, it's been excellent speaking to you. I love the business that you've been developing over the last few years. Doing something different, if everybody's doing a certain way, there's a lot of consultants out there, but actually bringing people into that more relaxed environment, looking at what the natural world is doing, because the natural world gets a lot of things right and we often break it by doing things in a different way. So it's been really fascinating speaking to you. Would encourage people to get in touch with Julia if they feel that's going to be useful for them. And obviously also have a look at the ebook as well. And we will put some details under the vodcast or the podcast as a description with some of those links as well. But I'd just like, again, to say, Julia, thank you so much for giving your time. And obviously, thanks everyone for listening as well.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I've had such fun. So thank you so much indeed. I love talking about this subject. So thank you for your time and letting me share this with your audience. Really appreciate it.
Thanks again, Julia. And as I say, thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully see you on a podcast or a webinar very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.